The sea of enlightenment in nature is perfect and clear. Complete distinct body is a miraculous source. But when basic brightness shone so that objects appeared, with the object's existence, the nature's brilliance ceased. Confusion and falseness bring about emptiness. Relying on emptiness, time and space take form. Thoughts settle, making countries and lands. What knows and feels becomes living beings. The emptiness created with great enlightenment is like a single bubble in all the sea. Lands like fine dust motes subject to outflows. All come forth out of empty space. Just as the bubble bursts, space is no longer there. How much the less the three states of being. Returning to the source, the nature is not two. Many are the entrances through expedients. None of them does the sagely nature fail to go through, complaint or adverse on its expedient. First, resolve and entering samadhi come slow or fast as there are different norms. Form and thought combined become the dust. Their essence is not discernible. How can one use what lacks clarity and expect to gain perfect penetration? In sounds, language is intermingled, but the meaning in a word, a name, a phrase is such that no single one can include them all. How can this bring perfect penetration? Awareness of smells comes through contact with them. Apart from them, one does not know that they exist. Since sensation of them is not constant, how can one reach perfect penetration? Flavors are not to us fundamental. They only exist when there is something to taste. Since this sensation is not perpetual, how can one derive perfect penetration? Touch becomes clear only when something is touched. Without an object, there can be no contact. With fluctuation between contact and separation, how can one gain perfect penetration? Dharmas are known as internal dust. Reckoned as dust, they are certainly sense objects. Involvement of object and object cannot be pervasive. How then can they lead to perfect penetration? Although seeing itself is clear and penetrating, making bright what is before one, it cannot shine behind. Ever reaching only half the four directions, how can it manifest perfect penetration? The nose breath penetrates in and out, but in the rests between there is no air. There's interruptions that render it inconsistent. How can one use it for perfect penetration? The tongue is not an organ apart from cause. Flavors form the source of its sensation. When flavor says it knows nothing at all, how can it attain perfect penetration? It is the same for the body as for objects of touch. Neither can be regarded as a perfect awareness. With defined and limited invisible divisions, how can it be used for perfect penetration? The mind's knowledge is a mass of deliberations. What it perceives is never profound insight. Unable to get beyond reflection and thought, how can it reveal perfect penetration? The seeing consciousness combines three aspects. From its origin, it has no appearance, since its very substance is variable. How can it bring perfect penetration? The heart of hearing penetrates the 10 directions. When born on the strength of great causes, those of initial resolve cannot enter this way. How can one expect to gain perfect penetration? Reflecting on the nose is a provisional method. It only serves to gather in and settle the mind. Once settled, the mind is simply still. How can that be perfect penetration? Speaking Dharma through the medium of language is enlightened too by those of former accomplishment. But words and phrases are not free of outflows. How can this make perfect penetration? Refraining from transgressions only controls the body. Lacking a body, 3 is nothing to restrain. Since its source is not all-pervasive, how can it bring perfect penetration? Spiritual penetrations are based on past causes. What connection have they with distinguishing dharmas? Conditioned thought is not apart from things. How can one attain perfect penetration? One may contemplate the nature of earth, but it is firm and solid, not penetrable. What is conditioned is not the sagely nature. How can one use it for perfect penetration? One may contemplate the nature of water, but such mental reflection is not the true and real. This state of suchness is not an enlightened view. How can it give perfect penetration? One may contemplate the nature of fire, but admitting dislike is not true renunciation. This expedient cannot be one for beginners. How can one use it for perfect penetration? One may contemplate the nature of wind, but movement and stillness are not non-dual. Duality cannot bring highest enlightenment. How can one expect perfect penetration? One may contemplate the nature of emptiness, but its aspect is murky and dull, it lacks awareness. What is unaware is different from body. How can it bring perfect penetration? One may contemplate the nature of consciousness, but one is regarding a consciousness that is non-eternal. Even the thought of it is empty and false. How can one get perfect penetration? All activities are impermanent. So too, mindfulness has its origin in rising and ceasing. Since cause and effect go beyond cause and effect, how can we use it for perfect penetration? I now say this world honored one, Buddha, who has revealed the Saha world. In this land, the true substance of teaching resides in hearing the sounds purely. If one wants to attain samadhi, hearing is the best way to enter. Apart from suffering, liberation is found. How excellent he who contemplates the world's sounds. Throughout compass as numerous as the Ganges sands, he enters Buddha lands as many as 5 dust motes. Obtaining great power of self-mastery, he bestows fearlessness on living beings. Wonderful is the sound of Quan Shi Yin, a pure sound like the ocean's roar. He saves the world and brings peace to all within it. He has transcended the world and his attainment is eternal. I now make this report, thus come one, regarding what Kuan Yin has just explained. It is like someone in a quiet place when drums are rolled throughout the 10 directions, hearing at once the sounds from all 10 places. This, then, is the actual true perfection. The eyes cannot see through solid forms. Mouth and nose are much the same. The body registers awareness only through contact. Tangled in thoughts, the mind lacks clear connections. Sounds can be heard even through solid walls. One can listen to things both near and far. None of the other 5 organs can match this. It then is penetration true and real. The nature of sounds is based in movement and stillness. One hears according to whether there is sound. With no sound, there is said to be no hearing. But this does not mean that the hearing has no nature. In the absence of sound, the nature is not gone, nor does it arise in the presence of sound. Entirely beyond production and extinction, it is then truly everlasting, ever present even in dream thinking. It does not disappear when conditions and thought are gone. Enlightened, this contemplation transcends cognition, reaching beyond both the body and the mind. Now in the Saha world, the theory of sounds has been proclaimed and understood. Living beings are confused about the source of hearing. They follow sounds and so they turn and flow. Ananda's power to remember was exceptional. Nonetheless, he fell prey to a devil plot. Was it not from heeding sounds that he was nearly lost? By turning back the flow, one will make no such mistake. Ananda, you should listen attentively. I rely upon the Buddha's awesome power in describing to you the Vara King, a samadhi inconceivable of likeness to illusions. It is the true mother of all Buddhas. You may hear the secret Dharma doors of Buddhas as numerous as motes of dust, but without first renouncing desire and outflows. You may amass learning, but you will still make mistakes. You concentrate on learning to uphold the Buddha's Dharma. Why don't you listen to your own hearing? Hearing does not spontaneously arise because of sound, it gets its name. But when hearing returns and is free of sound, what does one call that which is set free? As soon as one sense organ returns to the source, the entire six are liberated. Sight and hearing are like an illusory covering, the triple realm, a vision of flowers in space. When hearing reverts, the cataract is gone. The dust gives way to pure and perfect insight. When purity is ultimate, the light is penetrating. A stillness shines and includes within it all of emptiness. Looking at the world from this point of view, everything that happens is just like a dream. Mantaji's daughter too is part of the dream, who was able then to physically detain you. It is like a puppeteer who plays with her shadows and works the dolls to seem as real as pupil. Although one sees them move about freely, they are really governed by a set of strings. She is operating the controls and they return to stillness. The entire illusion is without a nature. The six sense organs are also thus. At first, there was one essential brightness which split into a sixfold combination. If but one part ceases and returns, all six functions will stop as well. In response to a thought, defiling objects vanish, becoming pure and wonderful perfect brightness. If there is a residual defilement, one must still study. When the brightness is ultimate, that is the Tathagata. Ananda and everyone in the great assembly, turn yourselves around and revert the hearing. Return the hearing and listen to the self-nature, till the nature reaches the supreme way. That is what perfect penetration really means. It is the gateway entered by Buddhas as many as dust motes. It is the one path to nirvana. Thus, come ones of the past perfected this method. Bodhisattvas now merge with this total brightness. People of the future who study and practice will also rely on this Dharma. Through this method, I too have been certified. Kwanshin Bodhisattva was not alone in using it. As the Buddha, the world-honored one, requested, I chose sincerely a skilling means, one to save those in the final end who seek to escape the mundane world and perfect the heart of nirvana. The best way is to contemplate the sounds of the world. All the other kinds of expedients require the awesome spirit of the Buddha. In some cases, they bring immediate transcendence, but they are not the customary means of practice. Spoken of those for those of shadow and deep roots alike. I bow to the ones thus come thus, and the Tripitaka, and to those inconceivable ones with no outflows, trusting they will aid those in the future, so that no one will doubt this Dharma door. It is an expedient easy to master, an appropriate teaching for Ananda and for those immersed in the final age. They should cultivate this organ of hearing, a perfect penetration that surpasses all others. It is the way to the true mind. Thereupon, Ananda and all in the great assembly experienced a clarity of body and mind. Having attained such profound instruction, they contemplated the Buddha's body and parinirvana, like someone who, having traveled far on business, knows that he is on the road home, though he has not returned completely. Throughout the entire assembly, the gods, dragons, and all the eightfold division, those of the two vehicles whom were not yet beyond learning, as well as all the bodhisattvas of initial resolve, as numerous as the sands in the 10 Ganges rivers, found their fundamental mind and, far removed from dust and defilement, attained the purity of the Dharma eye. The Bhikshuni named Nature attained arhatship after hearing this verse, and limitless beings brought forth a much less unequaled resolve for Anusara Samyak Sambuddhi.